Hello, everybody. So, Saturday, May 16th, we will be having a new moon in the sign of Leo. So, I wanted to take this opportunity to look into the nature of what might be coming through on this new moon in terms of energy, how that energy might correlate with events that are coming up in the collective, and just get an idea of how we can work with these archetypes in a skillful way. And, give us a little heads up on what we might expect both in our own lives and out in the world. So, as always, I consult the cards with the intent of being helpful. So, whatever is most helpful for us to know around this time, what suggestions for actions to be taken, and just whatever insight would give us the best opportunity of meeting emotions, events with skillful equanimity, or maybe skillful rebellion, depending on what's happening out in the world. Um, so that said, I'm just gonna check in with cards, check in with spirit, see what's going on. For those of you who don't know, I'm Erin Smith, and I am a tarot reader. I've been doing this since 2011, and I'm also an associate marriage and family therapist in the state of California. So I come at reading through both of those lenses. And I'm an attachment-oriented therapist, as well as, trained in a Jungian perspective. So that's for any of you who don't know who I am. So I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to go silent. I'm going to concentrate while I shuffle, and I will be with you momentarily. Okay, I'm just going to say a prayer over these cards. I think when I started, I hope I said this correctly. We are having a new moon in the sign of Taurus. I might have said Leo, but it is Taurus, in fact, where this new moon will be occurring. And of course, Taurus is a sign that relates to the earth and all that the earth yields in terms of how we take care of ourselves. So often Taurus gets associated with money, finances, the way we earn a living. Also, because Taurus is governed by Venus, it also has a lot to do with love and the way that we relate to one another. But there is a certain amount of earth energy that's coming up here. Um, Pentacles are the suit that we correlate with the element of earth. And again, also, it often gets associated with money and the way that we provide for ourselves, because in a capitalist society, that's how we do it, right? But, before the days of, earning a living, one would work the land, one would grow their own food. In some ways, this is a more closely related way for human beings to provide for themselves. They would take what they need from the earth. They would take trees and turn them into houses, or they would work some fields, or maybe even forage some food. And the earth provided us with a bounty of how we would take care of ourselves. And it's interesting because there is a kind of theme coming up here regarding the way that we take care of ourselves, and maybe even reimagining a new way. Or at least staying open to it, that there is some indication that the way that we have been extracting resources from the earth, maybe even extracting our needs from our primary relationships, that there has been this energy of clinging to these staid ways of getting our needs met that in some ways have choked the life out of the way that we show up in the world. So the Four of Pentacles is a kind of contracted energy. I mean, look at our friend here. He's like holding on so tightly to these coins that he needs in order to survive. And yet, what is being implied in this image? He's a king, he's sitting in front of his kingdom. He is, in fact, in possession of great wealth. He doesn't have to hold on so tightly. In fact, one might even interpret this image as being greed. Holding on so tightly to something that you already have, jealously guarding it against the intrusion of others. There's something very, I mean, again, you can even do this with me, this sort of contracted energy when we're pulled in around an issue, when all of our muscles are engaged in this sort of defensive posture. It doesn't allow for flow. It doesn't allow for us to receive a bounty when we are clinging to what we think we need, what we maybe already have, in this way that is almost, I associate with a kind of hypervigilance. This terrible fear that we're not going to get our needs met. So we selfishly cling to things, again, without allowing for this greater flow to come through. And in fact, that's really kind of what our friend, the Page of Pentacles, is asking us to do, is to let go and trust. Pages represent new beginnings, new opportunities, new people. There are new ways for us to be resourced in the world that look different, maybe, from the ways that we have typically clung to in the past. And in order to find these new ways, we have to be free to explore the way that children explore. Pages are childlike. And this idea of being able to play with possibilities rather than getting stuck in some preconceived idea of the way things should be, this ability to trust that if you go out in the world and you try new things, that those things are going to take care of us in good ways, yield some promising results. There is some major arcana energy here that is really at the core of what is happening for us in the world right now. The old structures are being torn down because they really aren't working anymore. I mean, maybe if you're a billionaire, they're working. But for the vast majority of people, at least in this country, we're desperately trying to make things work based on the structures that have been created, I think, really, especially since Citizens United got passed. There's a lot of statistical data to show that that decision, more than any other, has corrupted our democracy and made it virtually impossible for the average citizen to have their needs heard or responded to by politicians because they have been bought and sold by corporate interests and in some cases foreign governments. So that's what we're looking at here with the tower. The tower is major upheaval, big changes that affect us in core ways. The falling of structures that we once looked to for a sense of security that no longer serve us and therefore must fall. That the tower I often correlate with Kali, and Kali, the Dark Mother. She is the goddess of creation and destruction. Destruction is a part of creation. It is unfortunately a part of all human history. You know, I did my undergraduate work at a Buddhist university in Rosemead, and one of the requirements of my degree was to study Chinese history, which I found fascinating. I likely would not have taken that class had I gone to a more, Western university. But it was fascinating. And, the thing that stuck out for me most, I mean, obviously China is extremely old, thousands and thousands of years old. And yet the thing that was really, driven into us is this cycle, the dynastic cycles, right? So there were roughly 24 dynasties in Chinese history, and the cycle is always the same. An emperor would come to power, it would have the mandate of the people, and it would slowly become more and more corrupt until the people overthrew that emperor, and then the cycle would start over. And of course, it is in fact what we're seeing here in the United States, that our systems are corrupt to the core. They do not serve the vast majority of people. And so they are crumbling. And it is a necessary stage of the cycle to destroy what is old and not working so that something new can be reborn, so it can come in anew, in a fresh way, in a way that is maybe more egalitarian, serves community in a greater way, and maybe is more heart-centered. This is, in fact, the only cup that is coming up in this poll. The Three of Cups is finding community that is mutually supportive from the heart, that there's this uplifted sense of joy when we come together and care for one another. That is very much an energy of the Three of Cups. That we, in fact, have to let these old structures fall so that we can clear away the detritus and make space for something new to come in. And ultimately, what Spirit is saying is that there is a kind of fiery energy that is infiltrating our systems and bringing about much needed change in a very fluid and directional way. Wand energy is creativity, life force energy. It is the passion that we feel when we are motivated to take an action that is exciting, liberating. And the Eight of Wands is sort of fast-moving energy that is taking us in a very directional way. So what I always say about the Eight of Wands, it's like surfing a wave. So when you go out into the ocean to surf, you don't have to struggle and strain to make the waves happen. You paddle out, you wait for the right wave, and then you get on board and you ride it into shore. You harness the energy of that wave. You utilize the natural flow of momentum in order to propel you forward. And of course, knights are about taking definitive action. They're questers. They're seeking to fulfill a goal, and they will not stop until they've achieved that goal. And so what actions can we take that align ourselves with this flow that takes us in the direction of a new way of providing for ourselves and a new way of formulating relationships that are mutually supportive? And finally here, well, in actuality, this guy also appeared when I was shuffling. He sort of jumped. So I brought him into the mix. So in fact, there are 4 major arcana cards. These are very interesting cards to show up in this reading. In some ways, they're complementary. Hanged Man is Odin. He is the Norse god of wisdom, and he hangs himself from the tree of life in order to be enlightened. You can see that here in his halo. So in order to have the most enlightened perspective on the situation, you have to take everything you think you know and examine it from the opposite perspective. This is about having a radical shift in the way that we perceive ourselves, the world at large, what we think has to be. Oh, well, this is just the way that it's done. It's the way it's always been done. Well, nothing, the Buddhist principle of impermanence comes to mind. That nothing stays the same forever, no matter how much we cling to this old way for this false sense of security. We are asked to let go, to surrender, to continue to flow with the unfolding of time. Of course, the Wheel of Fortune is there to remind us that everything happens in seasons and cycles. So, how can we take the most enlightened perspective? And it really is about view taking. It is very helpful when you are in a situation to not only check in with your own perspective, your thoughts, your feelings, what is arising within you, but also to take the view of others. What are the people that you're involved with? What might their perspective be? To take a bigger bird's eye view on your situation. And then strength is about taming the beast within. It's mastering the mind so that the mind doesn't master you. And it really is an acknowledgement that not everything our head tells us is helpful or true. And certainly if you're a person who's done any kind of introspective work, you will know what I'm talking about, right? That there specifically, I think it's important to say, when we feel like our security is being threatened, there is the tendency to allow catastrophic thinking to sort of take us over. The fear of not having what we need can often spin us out and cause us to loop on worst case scenarios. And so what strength is asking us to do is to disidentify from those thoughts as though they are us, and to instead assume the position of the observer. I am not my thoughts. I am the one who is observing activity that's happening in mental talk space. The same way that I am observing activity that's happening in physical sense space, in auditory sense space, in visual sense space. This is activity that's happening in all these different sense spaces, but it is not who I am. I am the observer. And by distancing myself from the sensory output, I am able to practice greater discernment with my own thoughts. I am able to ask myself, well, do I know that that's true? And is it helpful for me to believe that? And if I cannot say yes to those things, then I simply let it play like it's the radio in the other room. I don't buy in. I don't allow my thoughts to capture me in the same way. I may notice that when I am thinking that, oh God, I'm losing my job to AI, I can't afford to pay for groceries anymore. Everything is, what am I going to do? I'm going to, all of this projective thinking, particularly when it's threatening our sense of security, it's intense. There's a lot of sensory activity that's happening. The mental talk couples with the emotional type body sensations, and it feels very solid. But again, if I can always stay in the position of observer, then I have the ability to notice these things and stay grounded, stay present. This is absolutely something that Taurus is asking us to do, to stay grounded in the face of great change, in order to choose where I want to put my energy, what actions I wish to take for the benefit of myself and others, rather than getting, sucked down the rabbit hole of despair and caught up in this self-destructive analysis of how I'm going to weather the storm of great change. So I often associate meditation with strength, because meditation is the practice that helps me to stay grounded, to not become overwhelmed by sensory experience, to widen the window of tolerance, and therefore, again, practice discernment. Choose my thoughts, choose where I'm going to put my focus. in that way, helping myself build the muscle of concentration. And again, this gives me the best opportunity to have a broad perspective, to take the view, if you will, and see all the different facets of a situation. So, yeah, that's some insight to hold during this time where we are asked to reflect on how is it that we are providing for ourselves materially in the world these days, and what actions can I take that feel like they offer the least resistance in terms of feeding my life force energy? And how can I willingly let go of the structures in my life that no longer serve and not hold on too tightly? These two, especially together, are let go or be dragged. So surrender. Surrender to the fact that whatever is leaving your life right now, it is best to let it go with a blessing and to trust that what's coming forward can be sweet and supportive in ways that maybe were unimaginable from a position of old. So I hope that that is helpful to all of you. And as always, I'm so appreciative of you taking part in my work. I'm always enjoy hearing from you, hearing how these readings land with you. And I'm very happy to make these offerings to you all. And I'm wishing you many blessings on this new moon in Taurus. Take care.